Yo, what's going on YouTube? And welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy Kevin Forte. We are taking a look today at the New York Rangers and the Washington Capitals drama saga that has been going on over the past couple of days. Now that the dust seems to have settled a little bit, we'll be taking a look at that in this video. So let's get right into some of the stuff we're hearing. So obviously, let's go back to last game, the first game between the New York Rangers and the Washington Capitals earlier this week. The Rangers and the Capitals played, and it got a little bit feisty at points. It got very feisty once Artemi Panarin was thrown down to the ice by Tom Wilson. Pavel Buchnevich was on the ice. Wilson was going after him. Panarin jumped onto Wilson's back, and Wilson pretty much lifted Panarin right off the ground, went after him, and threw him down to the ice. Buchnevich came back for last night's game. Unfortunately, though, Artemi Panarin did not. He will miss the remainder of the season. Yes, it is 3 games. It's not like he's missing 30 games this season, and the Rangers are out of the playoffs. So, rest of the season could be used in many different terms, but let's be honest, there's 3 games left for the Rangers. And now, after the game, you're expecting Wilson to get the hammer. I remember a couple weeks ago when the Islanders were playing the Capitals, those 3 games against the Caps, that, again, take with this what you will, but we're talking about Butch Goring, and he was saying, listen, this guy really has to watch what he's saying and watch what he's doing because the league has their eye on Tom Wilson. He has been a repeat offender numerous times, and he is starting to become a problem in the league. Right. So then he does what he did against the Rangers. So everybody was expecting the hammer to be dropped by the NHL and George Parros, a player safety, onto Tom Wilson. And after the uproar, after everything that happened, a $5,000 fine for Tom Wilson. And that's it. No suspension, right? That's the highest the CBA can give for a player safety misconduct. $5,000 fine. That's it. So obviously, Twitter and the Ranger fans out there went off. And it's one of those things where I understand why the Rangers fans are mad. Because let's be honest, if Islander fans, Devil fans, Flyers fans, Penguin fans, if Tom Wilson did that to your team, if they did that to, say, Giroux, or they did that to Nolan Patrick, or Nico Hischier, or Jack Hughes, or one of your young guys, you probably wouldn't like that too much. But I'm going to defend Tom Wilson here for a second, a devil's advocate. Now, the way I play hockey is biased to that as well, because I am a little bit more of a grinder. We'll go with that. Grinder, power forward-esque player. And what we've seen from Tom Wilson is he is trying so hard to stay on the line for what he's allowed to do and what he can't do. Now, the Pavel Buchnevich thing, his face is in the ground. That's pretty much as bad as a boarding penalty. So do we see fines get thrown around for boarding penalties? Yes, it does not look good. His face is in the ground. You could see numbers, and Tom Wilson is behind him, punching him. Now that's the next question. Where was Tom Wilson punching Pavel Buchnevich? Was it his shoulder? A lot of people would argue that he was punching him in the shoulder, and he kept Buchnevich was shaking his head back and forth. So it's not direct contact to his head, but his head kept hitting the ice. So that is part of the problem, right? And then the Panarin thing. Again, Panarin did poke the bear. He jumped on Tom Wilson's back, and Wilson ended up getting around and retaliated against Artemi Panarin. Did he have to super slam him into the ice? Absolutely not. But he was, at that point, defending himself to an extent. And that's, again, where I'm getting to. To an extent, what is the line? And that's, I think, part of the frustration from the fans out there, because it's where did he not draw the line? Like, as fans, we all thought, obviously he drew the line against the Rangers, but apparently the league didn't think so. So a $5,000 fine, and then the fun comes in. Yes, 2 days ago, when the New York Rangers, on their day off between the Rangers and the Capitals 2 games, the day in between where both teams were off, the New York Rangers social media posted something on Twitter, basically to the extent saying that they should fire George Peros. We are very disappointed with the league making only a $5,000 fine and no suspension to Tom Wilson, calling out Tom Wilson in particular. And like I said, actually saying that George Peros, the leader of the NHL's player safety, should lose his job. Now, I'm never going to sit here and say, anybody should be telling anybody what to do in terms of, who should be fired and this and that. Because I hate to tell you, that's called cancel culture. And Ranger fans may not want to hear that part, but that part does bother me just a little bit. I think that was a little bit messed up, and I think that's why the NHL got maybe a little bit PO'd about what the Rangers were doing. And I think that's something that we're starting to see the NHL maybe have to go in a certain direction, because this is unprecedented what the Rangers did. Usually, if a coach says something after the game, John Tortorella, usually he gets fined for whatever he says about the referees or whatever, because it's a reflection on the league that he is playing in. And the league obviously does not accept that. So now the Rangers sending out a letter basically calling out the NHL player safety in the league, and obviously probably rubbed the NHL the wrong way. So now, a little bit later, we start to hear the morning of the game, general manager and president John Davidson and Jeff Gorton are fired and let go from their duties with the New York Rangers, appointing Chris Drury as the next general manager of the New York Rangers. Now, I thought inevitably this was going to be the case eventually. If the Rangers' performance, whether this year, next year, 3 years, 10 years from now, it would be Chris Drury's job at some point. And teams started looking around, to get Chris Drury. Maybe the Buffalo Sabres were looking at him earlier this year, as well as other teams that we've been talking about. Other teams have been looking at Chris Drury as a general manager, and it looks like he'll be sticking around with the New York Rangers, which is a pretty fitting role. Honestly, Chris Drury, the general manager of the Rangers, it just seems to fit. But right when it came out, a lot of people were saying that because Jeff Gorton and John Davidson may have had some play with that situation, that's why they were fired. But then we started to hear the other angle, the caveat, and that was maybe because Dolan was maybe the guy in charge of this letter and everything, the management of Jeff Gorton and John Davidson were not on board with the team's decision and the owner's decision to do what they did, and it actually led to them losing their job. So, like I said, you could look at it from the sense that they got blacklisted by James Dolan, the owner of the Rangers. The NHL may have called Gary Bettman and said, listen, if you don't fire both, Jeff Gorton and John Davidson, we're going to give you a hefty fine. Or it was James Dolan himself getting rid of those guys because they did not agree that he should have sent that out. And there may have been a little bit of a mistrust there. And that's where James Dolan gets himself into a little bit of trouble, because now you're running the situation where you have personnel like management, you're letting them go because they don't agree with your belief in that call, and now you're going to fire them. That just seems a little bit odd to me. And if that's the Rangers ownership right now, I would be a little bit hesitant. Now, again, the Rangers, they're a great franchise. Madison Square Garden is a beautiful building, but when you've got an owner that makes decisions because of something like that, I swear, I really hope that it was the league that forced Gorton and Davidson out. Because if not, that is on James Dolan. And if the Rangers maybe see a little bit of a hiccup here moving forward because they don't have guys like Jeff Gorton and John Davidson, that could be a problem. He said it was all performance-based, but let's be honest, the Rangers, does that really work? David Quinn should have lost his job, which plenty of people brought up. If it was performance related, I would have thought David Quinn would have been the first guy to go, but apparently not. And the best part of this is we started hearing in articles that a big reason that the New York Rangers did what they did, yes, it did not help that we saw what happened with we saw what happened with their series against the Islanders, where they got their ass kicked by the Islanders twice in a row. What was it? 4-0 and 3-0. I mean, they definitely got cleaned up. But the situation with the Islanders and now what's happening here, I think it was enough for James Dolan to say, listen, I'm not liking the direction of this team. We've had 2 years now where we have not been successful, and it's time to move on. And what you're starting to see now is sort of something we've seen with the Buffalo Sabres. And Ranger fans probably don't want to hear that. Oh, we're different than the Sabres. It's only been 2 years. Now, I get that you are a very competitive market, but this is where the team is supposed to turn around next season. Rebuilds don't happen overnight, and I think a lot of Ranger fans forget what a rebuild is because for the most part they've been able to buy their way through, from where their success lies from. And unfortunately, you do have to rebuild. And now in today's salary cap era, it's even more important. We're seeing the Rangers rebuild, which they've done a very good job so far. But again, if it's performance-based off of 2 so-so seasons, that would be a mistake by management of the Rangers, and I don't know. I think Chris Drury's a good GM. If there's anybody in the league that could have taken that spot, Drury would be the guy. But I do have my concerns about management right now, or ownership with James Dolan. I think that was a very interesting move, to say the least, letting go of the Rangers. So obviously the game happens last night. We see a bunch of fights right off the bat. Great game. And Buchnevich getting into it, Ryan Strome getting into it, Kevin Rooney. It was everybody. And of course, to cap everything off, the Capitals win the game. TJ Oshie was the star of the game because his dad, who just passed away, it was Oshie's first goal since his dad passed away. So obviously the NHL PR took that moment to take away a little bit of light from this not so good situation in the league. TJ Oshie posted something as well. So the story ends on a light note, at least for the Washington Capitals. They win that game. Tom Wilson leaves the game due to injury, but we know he'll be back next game. It doesn't really matter. He was avoiding the Rangers at that point. But like I said, it ends with a nice story for TJ Oshie. The Rangers are out of the playoffs. It doesn't really matter. But I think they were trying to send a message to the league that maybe there was a little bit of mistrust and misjudgment by the league for how they should have handled the Tom Wilson situation. So, guys, let me know what you think in the comment section down below. I'm sure this is going to be a pretty interesting video in the comments because if it's anything like the Thomas Greiss video, I'm sure there'll be lots of controversy over, there's so much to the story at this point that you could argue is true or fair or whatever. And I want to hear what you guys think in the comment section down below. And if you guys like what we're doing here at Goal Line Hockey, want to see the latest news around the NHL, you guys know what to do. Make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and an even bigger subscribe down below. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you guys next time.